Welcome to Kicking It Local, the podcast all about the football community in South Australia. I'm your host, Johnny Kecko, and today I'm joined by a championship winning coach in the State League 2 of the newly promoted State League 1 team in Vipers FC. I'm joined by Majid Ibrahim. Mate, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Johnny. Thanks for having me. Appreciate you having me on the podcast.
Yeah, looking forward to talking to you, especially after a massive win for not only yourself, but the club in Vipers FC, their first ever piece of silverware in the Federation. How are you feeling on the back of that? Because I'm sure, as we see with the NPL teams and all that, celebrating for 3 days straight, you're a day after them. Are you still on the celebration rampage?
I think a lot of the players are still celebrating. I think we enjoyed Saturday night, and then, I'm too old to continue celebrating, but definitely really nice feeling and relief more than anything, to be honest. Yeah.
Well, I want to talk more in depth about that later on, because I also heard your celebrations included more coaching the day after. So I want to talk about that later on. But before that, your career in playing football was... you got a big career here in South Australia. You play with some big names, under big names as well. So I want to get through all that. And it all started back in the reserves at West Adelaide.
Yep.
Which is under a current coach of the Adelaide United youth team in the NPL, Airton. What was that experience like to play in the reserves for a team with such big history in West Adelaide?
Yeah, so the background there was growing up, my family is Egyptian Orthodox, and my dad was very big on Sunday you go to church.
Yep.
So I never played soccer as a junior. So I only ever joined when I was about 15, 16, when I could play under 18s,
Yep.
which is on Saturday. So I started a bit late. I went out to West Adelaide, played in the 18s a bit, and then I was in the reserves when Andrioli was coaching the seniors. And he'd sometimes get me to train with them, which was, a really nice experience, actually. But really good memories there.
What was it like? Because Airton was a player coach. What was it like having him as a coach and a player at the same time?
Yeah, well,
I know you weren't in the actual senior team, but being around it and your brother.
Your
brother was.
My memory of that and my brother being in the team, like I think all the players loved Andrioli and just like he was so intense and passionate in the coaching sense. But then as a player, he was actually a freak. So he kind of had it all. And as a youngster who's sort of more on the outside, it was really exciting. I used to love it when on the odd occasion I would get to train with them. Yeah, so that was my experience at West Adelaide back then. Yeah. So
then the next step from that, you went to another Greek team, so Adelaide Olympic, and you're there for a nice chunk, 5 years. At Adelaide Olympic. So what was the reason behind that move? Was there any specific reason?
Well, basically, that 99 was the last year that West Adelaide, the original West Adelaide, if you like, sort of existed.
Yep.
And then they collapsed or didn't exist. And back then there was a team called Olympians. Yep. So it's kind of like Olympians and West Adelaide merged to become Adelaide Olympic.
Yep.
So it was just a natural thing to go from West Adelaide to Olympic. Most of the players that I was with were went to Olympic as well. And I really, really enjoyed my time at Olympic. I loved it. I still it still feels like my club in a sense when you play for a long period and you still have a lot of friends from there. So it was really nice going to Olympic.
One of my recent guests, Simon Catanzaro, played there as well. At the same time, you were in the same squad together. He had a little bit of a different experience. He had a phone call while he's working at Just Jeans in Sydney. If you haven't heard that, you got to go back and listen to that story. It's incredible. But did you have anything similar? Did you ever get wine and dine to come to the club, or was it just a cheeseburger or something like that?
No, it was. No, they looked after me really well, Olympic, but definitely nothing like Simon. And Simon's a gun player. He's probably one of the best that's played in local soccer. And I don't really expect to be treated like Simon. So I did hear the podcast, and it was interesting to hear it because basically I'd been at Olympic playing in the first team for about 3 or 4 years consistently, and 04 was actually my last year at Olympic, and that was the year where Simon was flying in, etc. And it was an exciting time to be at Olympic.
As a player, having someone else fly in, because you're a local here, he's from Sydney, he's flying in, flying out. It's kind of like he's taken the place of a local. That's what the mindset could be for some. Was that like that for you?
Well,
at the start?
he pretty much was taking my spot. So,
So how
to be honest, at the time, you train and you want to play and all of that. So I probably wasn't keen on the idea. But also, once we got to meet Simon and saw him play, etc., I don't have a bad word to say about Simon. He's a fantastic character and was an unbelievable player. So I didn't really have too much to complain about. But obviously there was that element of I wanted to stay in that team, which was just getting stronger and stronger as time went on. And eventually the lower quality gets pushed out, which unfortunately was me. Yeah.
Well, you talk about one of your seasons that you were there, they made it to the final. You played 17 games. Played 2 of the finals series, but didn't get the cut in the grand final. What was that season like for you in the lead up to it, being a part of a team that made it all the way through to grand final?
Yeah, well, that season was just unbelievable. Like we had West Adelaide, we had Salapacides, we had Nathan Day, we had Catanzaro, we had Ilias Demazidis. It was just the most stacked team. George Sonis and Stav. I think Stav was there. I can't remember now, but. So very, very, very stacked team in terms of quality. And but by that point, to be honest, I've been in and out and more on the bench at times. So I was just fighting to stay in there because I could sense that it's a team that can achieve something. And obviously I wanted to be part of that. And I played, like you said, 17 out of the 22 games. And going into finals, I felt like I'm a chance. Obviously it was disappointing at the time, but Robbie Detroit was the coach at the time, and I don't have any hard feelings towards Rob at all. Looking back now, I think if I was a coach, I probably would have made the same decision. So it's hard at the time, but over time you sort of accept it and move on. Yeah.
Were you a little bit bitter from that? Off air, you did say you're a little bit bitter, but are you still bitter?
Yeah, look, it hurts because you don't get that many opportunities to, it's very hard to achieve something and win something, and having just won something as a coach this week, the feeling and the feeling among the players, the coaches, the club is unbelievable. So it's such a great feeling. So when you're playing, you desperately want to be part of that. So obviously when I missed out, I was extremely disappointed and probably took me a long time to sort of get over that.
Yeah.
And I still look back and think, I wish I was part of it. They didn't end up winning the grand final, but even just to be playing, it would have been special. But these things happen.
If you were playing, would they have won?
I'm not sure. No, I'd love to say yes, but the Metro team they lost to wasn't bad either. So,
Well, you kind of got your revenge on Robbie Detroit by smashing him 6-1 on aggregate in the semi-finals in the State League 2. So did that feel good to get him back?
Look, I get along well with Rob. I don't look at it as revenge. I think, Cobras had a superb year and they finished top, rightly so. So, from our perspective, it was awesome to win and book our spot in the grand final. But there was definitely no element of revenge. No, so.
maybe underlining maybe a little bit. Who knows? But we'll never know the truth. But your time at Olympic came to an end. Your next step, was there ever a clear step where you wanted to go, or did you just
I think, well, like I said, by the middle towards the end of 2004, I was struggling to keep my spot in the team. My experience at Olympic was great. I left on really good terms, but it was just a matter of I was 23 at the time, just wanted to play, and I could tell that I wasn't really going to get a game because, like I said, when you've got Westerville and Nathan Day and Salapacides and Catanzaro, it's very difficult to say I'm going to get in that midfield ahead of them. So I didn't have any ill feelings. I just thought it was time to move and potentially go somewhere where I might get more opportunity. And that was all it was really.
Well, the next step was Campbelltown City.
Yeah, so at the time I still am really good friends with Ilias Demazidis. We'd gone to school together. He was with me at Olympic and he was heading to Campbelltown. So he kind of said, come along to Campbelltown and you'll get, it might be a good opportunity. And I was keen to still play NPL or Super League, whatever it was called back then. So I did go to Campbelltown, but it just never worked out. I never quite settled. I never played well. I never trained well. I found it really difficult to perform for whatever reason, and it was very short-lived. And I think after about 4 or 5 weeks at Campbelltown early in the season, I had a chat with the coach at the time, and we both thought it's probably better if I was to go elsewhere.
What do you believe the reason behind that short-lived time there was? Do you know?
Look, it's hard to say. My memory is not great, but I remember always as a player, whether I was at Olympic when I was playing or when I went to Campbelltown or even when I went on to Cobras, I was one of those players that always had a bit of doubt in terms of... So I never really got comfortable at Campbelltown, and maybe a new environment with a lot of players that I didn't know. Maybe didn't help, but it probably just mentally wasn't strong enough to push through. And but it just didn't work out.
And after that, you moved to the Adelaide Cobras. So I want to talk about all the clubs you played at. And this is the final club that you played at before finishing off your playing career. What was it like playing there? Because you played at mostly Greek clubs. The first two were Greek. Then you went and had a very, very short stint at an Italian club. Now you've gone to a Cypriot club. So what was it like going to another an ethnic club?
Well, my reason to go to Cobras again was friends that I had played with at Olympic had gone to Cobras. So Pav Sukalis, who I was very close friends with, he'd left Olympic and gone to Cobras. He said good things about it there. There was a few other boys that I knew. So it was kind of, it made sense to go there. At the time, I think there was only 2 divisions. So Campbelltown Olympic were in the top division. Cobras were in the second one. And I remember the week I moved to Cobras, we played Noarlunga, who weren't the greatest team at the time, and it was pouring down with rain and the pitch was muddy, and I kind of thought to myself, what have I done? Like, was this the right move? But that was literally just the first week, and then after a while, the really nice people at Cobras, I loved my time there, and really good group of boys, and we went on to win the state league in 2006, which was really, really enjoyable. So I enjoyed my time at Cobras and was there for 4 or 5 years as well. So,
any moments that stick out for you apart from what you just mentioned? Or were there any key moments in that time there that you loved?
Cobras?
Yeah, Cobras.
I think the 2006 season, there was actually no finals that year. I don't know why. It was just finish top and you're the champions. Which was nice. And we went that season almost undefeated. I think we lost 1 game in that whole season. So I made really good friends there. I was already friends with Pav Sukalis, guys like Nick Ponti and Peter Harp, like a lot of guys that I got along really well, and I'm still, good mates with now. So it was, really enjoyable, that 2006 season.
Now, towards the end of your career, did you ever have aspirations to get into coaching, or?
It wasn't like I hadn't really thought about it when I was playing. I really loved football, and I loved the environments that clubs provide. And it was more that I wanted to stay involved in some capacity. But I never thought, I'm going to end up being a coach. It was more just, I'm going to miss being in club environments and I want to stay involved. And that's kind of how it evolved.
How old were you when your career came to an end at Cobras?
Yeah, I was only 29, so I was relatively young. I'd gotten married. We'd had our first son, so there was a lot going on outside of football. So it just felt like probably the right time to stop playing. But 29's fairly young to retire. Yeah.
And then within a couple of years, you found your way into coaching. And Cobras was where it all started for you again.
Yeah.
How did that come about? Was there any... Did you instigate, or they came to you, or what happened there?
Well, basically, so after I'd stopped in 2009, I'd kind of just stopped doing anything football related. I was, just busy with work and family, etc. But then I think at the beginning of 2012 or end of 2011, I'd made contact with Cobras just saying, that I'd be interested to come back in some capacity. At the time, Chris Trajanovski was the head coach.
Yeah.
So he made contact and we had a chat, and he got me on board to be his assistant, which I was, really excited about. I thought it's a good opportunity and learn from him and be involved at a club where I had some ties. So that's kind of how it all came about. And then, so we did pre-season of 2012 where Traj was the coach and I was the assistant. But then, strangely enough, about a week prior to round one, he'd gotten a job in the mines where he'd have to be away for 3 weeks and back for one. So it was really late to bring in a new coach, and the club sort of thought, I've been there for pre-season and let's stick to what we have. And so I went from nothing to assistant to senior coach all in the space of a couple of months.
Did he still have an influence in the team, or was he just leaving?
No, he'd gone completely. So because he wasn't here, I mean, he'd come and watch the odd game, and but no, he didn't really have any influence at all because he simply couldn't be there. Yeah.
How did you find that first year being thrown in the deep end? What was it like to be there as an assistant, but then bang, you're the head coach?
It was actually really strange because I think the way I coach now is quite different to how I was back then. I mean, back then, initially I'd just gone into, basically in my mind, I was going to get involved and learn a bit and stay involved at a club where I, wanted them to succeed. So, but then to be the coach, it was kind of, it was a little bit being thrown in the deep end. But to be fair, Trajanovski had him the year before and he'd assembled a good squad and he'd set everything sort of in place where I didn't have to change too much. So it was probably a good way to start looking back. But it was a strange experience.
It's do you think that's what helped you, being thrown in that deep end at the beginning is what helped you to where you are now as a coach?
Yeah, I think so. The funny thing was that 2012 year we got promoted, so we went from State League 1 to NPL or whatever it was at the time. And then I was coach again in 2013 and we got relegated from NPL to... So I look back at that time and I think that 2013 season where we got relegated, that's where I learned, that 12-month period, I learned more than any other time because when things are going well and you're winning, it brushes over a lot of things, which was what 2012 was like. So my first experience was, it's not too hard. We're winning. I'm not having to change anything. Things are going well. We're probably achieving more than what the expectation was. So 2012 was fantastic, but 2013 was a real struggle and we were battling relegation the whole year and we ended up getting relegated. And I think while it wasn't a pleasant experience, I think that was the biggest learning moment really was that season.
And then you stayed on for one more year and then...
I stayed on for another... So 2014, the club said, we want you to stay on and we were kind of going to go down the path of youth and starting again and all that kind of thing, which I was really on board with. Now, there came a period halfway through that 2014 season where I sort of said to the club, like we'd spoken about me staying on long term to sort of rebuild, if you like. I had a few things going on outside of football with like my kids, etc., that I felt like I don't think I can commit fully to that plan. So I went back to the club and said, just to be really transparent, I'm happy to finish out the year, but I don't think I can go through with... So I was trying to do the right thing by the club because they were always really good to me, Cobras. And then, so I said to them, you're well within your rights, start looking for a senior coach from now. And as it happened, we sort of parted ways halfway or towards the end of that season. So I was sort of at Cobras for about 2.5 seasons, but again, I think I left on good terms and some of the guys that are still there now, like Simon Panay and Paul Sotirio, we get along really well. And so there was definitely no hard feelings. It was just a matter of I couldn't quite commit to the level that I needed to. And we parted ways.
Did you ever want to go back there again or was it?
Not really. I mean, after that period, I sort of went away from football a little bit to focus on other things and that. But by then I had a real passion for coaching and was starting to do, the C license and the B license and just pop into odd trainings to try and learn. So definitely the passion was there, but I wouldn't say I was set on, Cobras or a certain club. I was kind of just going to wait and see where a good opportunity came along, and I felt like probably needed to be assistant somewhere and learn a bit more.
Yeah.
I realised at that point that, that there was still a lot that I needed to learn, just like today, really. But yeah.
So you had a couple of years off, and then found your way back at Raiders is your next step as an assistant. So your first opportunity to get an assistant job, how'd that come about?
Yeah, so Rob Matosevic was appointed at Raiders, and I'd met Rob in the coaching licenses. We'd done, I can't remember now, but 1 or 2 of the licenses together. When you do those licenses, you kind of network a little bit with coaches, and some guys you gel with. I got along really well with Rob, and once he got the Raiders job, he called me, said, would you be interested to come out as an assistant? And I thought that was a really good opportunity to work with Rob. So I went out there and was assistant to Rob Matosevic, yeah.
Did you learn something different being as an assistant than what you did previously as the head coach?
Yeah.
Did you enjoy it more?
I think that period with Rob Matosevic, again, that's the best thing that could have happened for me, because he was an unbelievable coach. He was super organised. He was really clear as to how he wanted his team to play, even his leadership for the players and coaches. So, again, that's probably the best thing that could have happened to me, is to learn under someone like that. And I consider Rob now as a bit of a mentor. So even throughout this season and last season,
yep,
I'm constantly calling him and picking his brain and, sending him things and saying, what do you think of this and what do you think of that? So he's an unbelievable coach. Unfortunately, he's sort of lost the energy or the passion to coach his own team, but he's probably the best coach I've worked with, yeah.
So then after that, you went to a few more teams before you ended up getting your first senior coaching role, which happens to be at Vipers. But your next few steps, what were they like? So next after that was Croydon, West Adelaide, and funnily enough, the Strikers as well, Western Strikers.
Yeah.
So what were those 3 clubs like to be a part of, and how did they impact you in your coaching career?
Yeah. So with Croydon, it was more Costanzo was the coach, and Rob Matosevic had gone as a goalkeeper coach there. I'd been speaking to Rob, just saying, I just want to come out to some trainings and, learn and whatever. Do you think Ange would be okay with that? Ange was really good. He sort of said, come on as like a third assistant, if you like, and we'll get you involved and that. So it was a little bit part-time with Croydon, and I was more there to, I'd probably say I wasn't really contributing. It was more just to learn and observe, and then, have some chats with Ange in terms of feedback and whatnot. But so that was really good. I mean, Ange was fantastic about that, and I enjoyed my time there, and Ange is a great coach as well. So I learned, but that was a brief period because, like I said, it was very part-time. So it's not as if I was, committed to the 3 nights a week. So that was good. I mean, it was fantastic that they let me do that. The West Adelaide experience was a bit different in the sense that, so Elias Demitzidis, who I'd mentioned before, we were good mates, and he'd been appointed to coach West Adelaide. So he gave me a call and said, would you be interested to come out and help me there? And I thought that would be great because, like knowing Demo and being friends for a long time, I thought that would be a good experience. I was with Elias for pre-season. Unfortunately, that didn't last all that long, and me and Demo moved on, after a very short period at West Adelaide. So, it is what it is, but it was very short-lived, yeah.
And at that time at West Adelaide, I think that was around the same period that Marcelo Carrusca was there, I think, for a very short period.
I think we missed each other. So Cello wasn't there when I was there. I don't know if I was first or he was first, but I mean, I did pre-season and 3 games. So
yeah, I think he did a few games as well.
Yeah, so so I missed Marcelo. I wasn't there for that. And then again, I sort of had a period where I wasn't doing anything. I was still keen. There was that COVID break in 2020.
Yep.
And Western Strikers contacted me saying the coach at the time, Mauro DeMarco, is the coach. He doesn't have an assistant at all at the moment. We'd like to appoint an assistant that can help him. I had a chat with Mauro. He was happy to get me on board. So I was at Strikers for virtually all that season, the 2020 season.
Yep.
And that was a great experience. I really enjoyed my time at Strikers. Really good people. I did enjoy that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, all your experiences at all the clubs, despite obviously, except for Adelaide Cobras, were all pretty small. You left early, started later. Is there any reason behind that? Or was it just you just couldn't find the right? You weren't.
Well, to be
happy?
honest, it was. As an assistant, you're very much governed by the coach. So for example, at Raiders, I was there when Rob started, and when Rob left, I left. With West Adelaide, I was with Demitzidis, and when he left, I left.
Yep.
The Croydon one's a little bit different. I wouldn't really say I was an assistant coach. It was basically Ange and Rob were nice enough to let me observe and learn, which I really appreciated. So I don't think I was really. I mean, I enjoyed my time at Croydon and they made me feel welcome, but I don't really consider that I was ever there in any capacity. Yeah. It was more just an observer. While they're all brief, it was. I mean, had Rob Matosevic stayed on at Raiders, I was loving it there. I wasn't going to go anywhere. And had Demo stayed at West Adelaide, potentially I would have stayed longer as well. So when you're an assistant, it's kind of more. You're there to assist the senior coach, and when the senior coach goes, you walk as well. So I think that's just the reason for it. The Western Strikers one's a little bit different because at the end of that season, that's when Vipers spoke to me in regards to becoming the senior coach, and obviously I had ambitions to be a senior coach. So when that opportunity came, I spoke to Strikers, and I was very transparent about potentially moving on.
Yep.
And they were very supportive, and so it's difficult as an assistant because you don't really dictate when you enter and when you leave, I think. So.
Yeah, because then the new one comes in, might not want you. So
and you've got to have assistants. As a coach now, I want assistants that I know I can work with and I know they can help me. So they might be fantastic coaches, but they might just not fit what I want and vice versa. So you need to be a good fit.
Well, sadly, that brings us to the end of part one of with Majid Ibrahim. And there's a whole lot more to come in part two, where we get to talk about the rest of his coaching career and also the big moment, winning the 2022 State League 2 Grand Final. You did take the next step this season. You made it all the way through to the Grand Final. You finished second on that against Robbie Troy's Cobras. So, but they couldn't get the job done against Western Strikers, which is funnily your old team as well. So many links there between you. So, getting the opportunity to play against Western Strikers in a grand final, what was that like as you, for a personal note? That's your former club. Is it hard to put that aside?
Oh, look, I think leading up to the game, it was just a game we had to win. Yeah. So it didn't really matter whether it was Strikers or Cobras or anyone else. We just, I'm very much focused on Vipers and what Vipers need to do. But having said that, I think at the final whistle and then, we're so happy, and I can see people that I know who are obviously disappointed, which is what we experienced the year before. That was a little bit hard in the sense that I did feel for them. And again, you could probably argue that this year's grand final, that they probably felt that they should have won. So that would definitely hurt. And so it was kind of, my daughter still plays at Western Strikers, and I do have a lot of respect for that club and some fantastic people there. So definitely I felt for them, but I don't think leading up to or during the game I had any I had any feelings other than Vipers need to win.
Are you going to avoid going to training for a couple of weeks?
Well, funnily enough, Hannah, my daughter's got her presentation this Friday night, so reaching the Australia Cup was ever on the radar. So definitely there was a lot of excitement. There was a lot of hype. So the players got to go through, that buzz and excitement and anxiety of a big game and playing on a big stage in front of a big crowd. So I think that definitely helped us come grand final. So really, we were well prepared because of a lot of it is to do with that cup run. I think it played a part. Yeah. With
that structure that we currently have, do you think that works and should be something that we stick with for the future, or should we go down a different path?
I kind of think that if you like I'm one of those football people who likes, the top two get promoted, finish, the top team is the champions, and it's all over. But I do understand, like if you use our league this year as an example, if the system was just two teams up, probably the last 6-7 games would have had no bearing at all for about 7 or 8 of the teams in the league. So you'd get a lot of dead games, and probably the same in State League 1. So my personal preference is if you finish first, you're the champions and you're promoted, and then have some sort of playoff system between 2nd and 5th or 2nd and 6th, whatever it is, and call it a playoffs. Don't call it finals.
And there's a whole lot more to come in this chat with Majid Ibrahim, including that all-important grand final win, which will go down as one of the greatest grand finals. That is part 1 with Majid Ibrahim. Make sure you subscribe to Kicking It Local wherever you get your podcasts so you can get a taste of the SA football community. Plus, follow Kicking It Local SA on Instagram and Twitter so you don't miss any of the action. See you soon!